South Africa needs healing and needs it now. These were the words of Dr Pali Lehohla at the recent Healing Memories event that was held in Durban. Lehohla says the South African society is sick and the Zondo Commission has revealed the depth of the ailment. Victims have become victimizers. Society has been numbed and has normalised that which is not normal. Dr Lehohla, former Statistician-General of South Africa, joins us from Lesotho, and he's going to unpack a couple of his views for us. He is now the Director of Economic Modelling Academy and also a Professor of Practice at the University of Johannesburg and a board member of the Institute for Economic Justice at Wits. Dr Lehohla, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Thank you very much for disrupting my rest at the Mountain Kingdom.
Oh, we will leave you in a few minutes to go and enjoy and enjoy the lights for us as well. I can see it's nice to see you looking so bright. Normally we find you in the dark when you're here in South Africa. But let's talk about this concept that you've brought up, the concept of a numb society that has come to normalize the abnormal, where the abused become the abuser and the victim becomes the victimizers. Powerful words. Unpack this for us.
Well, I was invited by Father Michael Lapsley to his 25th anniversary of healing of memories. And for me to come to that conclusion was obvious, but creating a framework that was quite enlightening from healing of memories, I realized that certainly we need healing. But I expounded a little bit on that to say that perhaps when we considered the Sustainable Development Goals that are 17, there is a goal number 1. Of course, currently the goal number 1 is poverty and hunger. But perhaps goal number 1 is in the Sustainable Development Goals is that one of healing. And we should start with South Africa, which requires healing. Because without that healing, victims become victimizers. And I make an example about raw behavior of animals. And we are part of that animal kingdom that has been reduced despite our claim to consciousness and ability to do things. We've been reduced to that rawness of animal behavior where the victims become future victimizers. And we can see it right across the South African state that those who said they liberated have become actually those who are victimizing after being victimized by apartheid. They are impugning that on the rest of society. And at different levels of society, be it gender-based violence, be it economic victimization. For instance, I mean, how many children are writing in the dark and are expected to succeed in their exams? There's no light. And government says it is governing. What the hell it is governing begs the question, didn't they see what happened in 1976? And what that effort did in terms of liberation, but also destroying education? I think this is the second coming of destruction of education at the level where it is being done by a democratically elected government, depriving citizens of electricity. This is where now, at the level of governance, the governance becomes the victimizer of society.
And it is a major problem.
And we have become numb to this.
Yeah, and the repercussions are huge. I mean, it was just this weekend that we started hearing from one of the biggest employers and manufacturers here in South Africa, VW, saying that they are watching closely because they very well may just decide to close their plants because they can't handle the amount of uncertainty, particularly when it comes to electricity and the logistics around it. It's becoming very difficult. You talk of the depth of the ailment and the cancer that has been revealed. We saw it all coming out in the Zondo Commission, but there have always been so many signs of cancers in South Africa's socio-economic and political spheres, whether it's tragedies such as the unprecedented corruption starting from the years of the arms deal, a highly unequal society while politicians live ridiculously lavish lifestyles. We saw the Marikana police brutality, COVID-19 citizens abused by the military, the stealing of money that is meant to go to desperate people during COVID. The list goes on and on. Perhaps you want to dwell on that for a bit.
Oh, yes. I mean, many companies now are considering going to countries that have experienced this kind of situation before. But having learned their lessons, they are building. Ours is every day peeling deeper depths of uncertainty, of corruption, of everything. Every day we reveal things. And of course, the banks have now come to confess that there has been rand manipulation, to which government, which rejected that this was the case some years back, is coming back and saying these banks. And of course, we are heading for an election and they have to make some populist statements around this, instead of standing and being responsible citizens of managing and dealing with the corruption. We had, when the Zondo Commission report was presented, that there will be action. There's been none to date. We are still waiting and we are counting. And Zondo himself says, watch the space. Zondo Mark II may occur under the circumstances. So South Africa is a case of going deeper and deeper into crisis. So when Volkswagen says we are up to here, it's because they don't see a different future emerging. They are seeing a country that is determined to destroy itself. And now with an election, there is a frenzy that is going on around, are we going to win an election? And it's not about what are the programs that will undertake to take South Africa out of this malaise. Even probably considering that, let's have a postponement of an election, let's get some sensible people in government that should correct the situation while we prepare for a different society, because the elections are not going to solve our problems at all. That's the wrong thing to look at. What is at the heart of our problems are economic inequalities, are poverty, unemployment, and so on. I've spoken about this matter that the government offering private sector, ESCOM, or rather electricity, rail, and crime, it's a misdirected priority. Our priorities are poverty, inequality, and unemployment. Now, when you do that, you create space for a frenzy of feeding at the trough, especially in the dying years of the fifth administration, in anticipation of the emergence of the sixth administration, or is it the seventh administration that is coming? And all these add to the confusion. And the messaging is absolutely so deplorable that a society has been turned into a dilapidated football, the one that we used to use when we were young boys, and they didn't have a bladder, and then we would have to stuff it with old cloth to make it look like it's a football. This is what South Africa has become.
Yeah.
And imagine.
I mean, if the black society in South Africa revolted against the white government all those years ago, what has now made society docile under such abusive behavior, like this corruption we are seeing of politicians, inequality, years of load shedding, a jobless rate that is absolutely failing the nation, a non-growth economy? Why are we so docile?
Well, there is a situation that, when those you expected to do differently abuse you and disappoint in the way they have, they numb you. And you take time to absorb in disbelief what has happened. That doesn't mean that society doesn't have a potential to rise and solve its problems. And I've seen many of those signs, and this healing of memories is one of the key things that we actually have to put at the top, at the number one priority, to deal with the healing, because suddenly we are in a vicious cycle of victimization, victims becoming victimizers of the future. And this is where we are trapped in. And I believe that through healing of memories, we are able to deal with this. Think about Kim Moshweshwe, when his grandfather was eaten by the cannibals on his pilgrimage from Mnkwaneng to Tababusiu. What did he do? He got arrested the cannibals, brought them to book, and then where the warriors were saying, these people deserve death, he said, I cannot desecrate the graves of my grandfather. He understood what turned these people into cannibals. He provided with them plows and everything. Spears were turned into plows. And slavery, not slavery, but cannibalism at that point came to an end in Lesotho. It took a magnanimous leader to deal with a momentous challenge that made Lesotho an anomaly in society. But by that act alone, he was able to resolve the thing of cannibalism. And he was the first on the continent to create granaries called the CU to ensure that there is an ever normal granary. Yeah. So we need that kind of leadership that is empathetic and that is not running out of a collation of money, spin, and hurrying for an election without saying what that election will deliver, except give us another chance so that we can steal more.
Indeed, and make a lot of promises, like saying load shedding is going to come to an end at the end of this year, which is not necessarily looking like the case. On the of victims becoming victimizers, I mean, you use a very powerful and almost a disturbing illustration by the late Pik Botha of a humiliation the Boers suffered in concentration camps under the British. What is the explanation for that? I mean, it even happens in households where abusers become abusers, but they choose easy targets like women and children.
Oh yes, that's usually the case. I mean, look at Palestine now, Israel. The Zionists are taking their anger at the Palestinians and not at the Germans. Pik Botha, when he was interviewed by Risenga Maluleka, who was my successor, we were engaged in a project with Tukufu Zuberi, who continues to do this, looking at post-colonial Africa. And he was looking at the case of South Africa to conclude Africa of post-colonial era. Unfortunately, at that point, President Beju was removed from office, so he couldn't be interviewed. Msholozi was about to enter. He hasn't been interviewed. Bakoni Ndademtlande has not been interviewed. And President Ramaphosa is yet to be interviewed because the story of post-colonial Africa has not been concluded. Now, one of the interviews were about the current leadership that was there then during apartheid and post-apartheid. So President Mangosuthu, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi was interviewed, so was President de Klerk, so was Pik Botha. And Pik Botha came out in this very clear manner that demonstrated that victims can become victimizers. And Risenga asked him, why are you unleashing your anger at black people who did nothing to you instead of the British with whom we have colluded? Botha went on and said, those British, you know, those concentration camps, those people abused us. We suffered as the African nation, and that's why we had to do what we had to do. Now, did what they had to do have to do with oppressing blacks? It looks like there was an answer. And this kind of behavior I saw in donkeys, where if you castrate a donkey that has not sired, it goes and kills the fowls, the young of a donkey. They kill it after birth. And this is what we are seeing about South Africa in the current, where the victims of yesterday are victimizers of today.
We leave it there. Powerful words indeed, and definitely always food for thought from Dr. Pali Lehohla, who is the former Statistician-General of South Africa. He's in Lesotho at the moment, and we thank him again for his time and talking to us here on the program.